This is your last chance, Miss Carter. If you don't pay by Friday, you're out." The landlord's voice echoed through the dimly lit hallway as Sarah Carter clenched her fists. She had heard these words too many times, and each time, they felt like a hammer shattering her fragile hope. She had only 3 days left. 3 days before she would be thrown out of her tiny, rundown apartment in Brooklyn. 3 days before she officially became homeless, Sarah had always believed in her business idea, an innovative fashion brand that fused artificial intelligence with personalized style recommendations. But belief alone wasn't enough. Investors had turned her down more times than she could count. Banks didn't trust a 24-year-old with no collateral. And now, she had hit rock bottom. Her stomach rumbled, but food was a luxury she couldn't afford tonight. Instead, she sat at her cluttered desk, flipping through her worn-out notebook filled with sketches, market research, and potential strategies. It was all there, an idea that could change the fashion industry forever, if only someone would believe in her. That's when her best friend, Elena, called. "You won't believe what I just heard." Elena's excited voice filled the silence. Sarah sighed. "Unless it's a miracle, I don't want to hear it. It might just be one. There's a billionaire investor in town, Xavier Sinclair. He's hosting a private event at the Grand Lux. If you can somehow get in, maybe, just maybe, you can pitch your idea." Sarah's heart pounded. Xavier Sinclair. A name she had only seen in Forbes and business magazines. He was a self-made multimillionaire who had a reputation for transforming struggling startups into billion-dollar companies. But how could she possibly get into an event filled with New York's richest elite? "Forget it, Elena," Sarah whispered. "I don't belong there." Elena wasn't having it. "Sarah, this is your shot. You can't just sit there and let your dream die. You have nothing to lose." She was right. Sarah had nothing to lose. And so, despite the odds, she made a decision. She was going to crash the event, dressed in the only decent outfit she owned, a simple black dress with scuffed heels. Sarah arrived at the Grand Lux. The air smelled of expensive cologne, champagne, and exclusivity. She had no invitation, no credentials, just sheer determination. The security guards stood like statues at the entrance, scanning every guest with a watchful eye. There was no way she could just walk in. Then, an opportunity presented itself. A group of wealthy socialites entered, laughing loudly. Seizing the moment, Sarah slipped in behind them. Blending into the crowd, inside, the ballroom was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers, golden decor, and men in tailored suits discussing deals worth millions. And then, she saw him, Xavier Sinclair, tall, sharp-featured, and exuding effortless power. He stood in a corner, sipping whiskey while listening to a group of businessmen. Sarah's nerves nearly crushed her. What was she thinking? She was just an ordinary girl, drowning in debt. He was a billionaire who had everything. She was about to turn around and leave when, lost. A deep voice startled her. She spun around and found herself face to face with Xavier himself. Her breath hitched. This was it. Her moment, but the words refused to come out. Xavier raised an eyebrow. "You don't look like you belong here." Sarah swallowed her fear and said the one thing that could change everything. "I have an idea that could make you richer than you've ever been." His lips twitched in amusement. "That's quite a claim." "Give me 5 minutes," she pleaded. "If I waste your time, I'll walk away." Xavier studied her, intrigued. "Fine," he said, swirling his drink. 5 minutes. Sarah took a deep breath, steadying herself, and then, she began to speak. Sarah's hands trembled as she spoke. She knew she had only 5 minutes to make an impression that could change her life. "I've spent years developing an idea that could revolutionize the fashion industry," she began. "Imagine a technology that personalizes fashion based on an individual's body shape, preferences, and lifestyle, powered by artificial intelligence." Xavier tilted his glass slightly, watching her with curiosity. "AI in fashion? That's nothing new." "But my approach is," Sarah countered, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. Most AI fashion tools just recommend existing designs. My software creates original styles based on personal data, making every piece one of a kind. Xavier leaned back, sipping his drink. And you have proof this works? Sarah hesitated. I have research, sketches, algorithms I've been working on. I just don't have the money to develop the full software. A smirk played at Xavier's lips. So, let me get this straight. You want me to invest in something that doesn't exist yet? Sarah's throat went dry. She knew this was the moment where most investors walked away, but she wasn't going to let that happen. I don't expect blind faith, she said, locking eyes with him. Just a chance. Give me a week. I'll put together a full business plan, projections, and even a small prototype. If you still think it's a waste of time, I'll never bother you again. Xavier studied her for what felt like an eternity. Then, with a slow nod, he said, 1 week. Show me something worth my time. Sarah exhaled, feeling both relief and pressure flood her system. This was it. She had one shot to prove herself. Sarah barely slept that week. She spent endless hours working in the library, coding, sketching, and piecing together her business plan. Lena brought her food, forcing her to eat in between work. You're going to collapse before you even pitch to him. I can't afford to fail, Sarah muttered, her eyes burning from exhaustion. On the 7th day, with a makeshift prototype and a well-organized business plan, she sent Xavier a message. Sarah, it's ready. When can we meet? His response came quickly. Xavier, tonight. 8 p.m. My office. Sarah's stomach knotted. This was her moment. Xavier's office was intimidating. Floor-to-ceiling glass windows overlooking the city, a sleek mahogany desk, and an air of quiet authority. He sat across from her, arms folded. Impress me. Sarah took a deep breath and launched into her presentation. She showed him the research, the statistics, the market gap. Then, she demonstrated her AI software, albeit in a basic form. She held her breath as Xavier stared at the screen. Finally, he spoke. There's potential, he admitted. Sarah's heart leaped, but... Xavier leaned forward. You untested. You have no experience running a business. Investors don't just throw money at passion. They need results. Sarah's stomach twisted. I understand. But if you give me, Xavier cut her off. I'll give you a shot. She froze. What? I'll fund an initial prototype. But there are conditions. Sarah swallowed. I'm listening. 1. You'll work under my company for now. 2. I own a percentage of the business. And 3. His gaze darkened. If you fail, I walk away, and so does my money. It wasn't ideal. But it was an opportunity. Sarah extended her hand. Deal. As Xavier shook her hand, he smirked. Let's see if you're as good as you claim to be. The moment Sarah walked out of Xavier's office, reality hit her like a wave. She had a deal with one of the most powerful businessmen in the country. But now, she had to prove herself. The next morning, she arrived at Sinclair Enterprises, a towering glass building that made her feel like an imposter. A receptionist greeted her with an indifferent glance. Miss Carter. Mr. Sinclair is expecting you. Follow me. She was led to a sleek conference room, where Xavier sat, flipping through some documents. His presence was as intimidating as ever. Sit, he said without looking up. Sarah took a deep breath and sat down. Xavier finally glanced at her. I have assigned you an office and a small team. You have 3 months to develop a prototype worthy of mass production. 3 months. That was barely enough time. Understood, she said, though inside, she was already panicking. Just as she was about to ask about her team, the door swung open, and a woman strutted in, tall, poised, and radiating authority. This is Victoria Hayes, Xavier said. She'll oversee your progress. Sarah's stomach dropped. She had read about Victoria, a ruthless business strategist and Xavier's right-hand woman. Victoria gave Sarah a once-over and smirked. So, this is the genius who convinced Xavier to take a risk. Let's see if you can actually deliver. The next few weeks were brutal. Sarah's team, composed of experienced professionals, didn't take her seriously. Some openly doubted her leadership. She's just a struggling designer, one murmured. I give her 2 weeks before she crashes. Another whispered. Victoria didn't help either. She set impossible deadlines and scrutinized Sarah's every move. One evening, after another failed prototype test, Sarah sat alone in her office, staring at the screen. Tears burned in her eyes. Maybe she wasn't good enough. Maybe Xavier had made a mistake investing in her. Her phone buzzed. A message from Elena. Elena, don't you dare give up. You fought too hard for this. Sarah wiped her tears. No. She couldn't let self-doubt win. She rolled up her sleeves. If she was going to prove everyone wrong, she had to push harder than ever before. 2 months in, everything changed. Sarah's team finally had a working prototype, a digital fashion AI that designed unique outfits in real time. It was still rough, but it was functional. Xavier called for a private demo. As Sarah presented, she saw something rare, a flicker of admiration in Xavier's eyes. This is actually impressive, he admitted, but before Sarah could celebrate, Victoria spoke. It's promising, but there's a problem, she said, tapping her nails on the table. This technology would be better suited under Sinclair Enterprises entirely. Why let an inexperienced entrepreneur run it? Sarah's stomach twisted. Victoria was suggesting that the project be taken away from her. She turned to Xavier, her heart pounding. You promised me a chance. Xavier didn't respond immediately. He was thinking. Sarah's entire future hung in the balance. Sarah held her breath, waiting for Xavier's response. If he sided with Victoria, everything she had worked for would be ripped away from her. Xavier finally leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. Victoria, you make an interesting point. Sarah's heart sank, but, he continued, this was Sarah's idea. And a deal is a deal. Relief flooded Sarah's chest, but Victoria's expression didn't change. Instead, she gave Xavier a tight smile. Of course, Mr. Sinclair. If you trust her to handle it, then I'll respect that. But Sarah knew better. Victoria wasn't giving up that easily. From that moment on, Victoria made Sarah's life a living nightmare. Budgets were mysteriously delayed. Important meetings were rescheduled without Sarah's knowledge. Even her team began receiving conflicting instructions. One evening, Sarah caught Victoria in a whispered conversation with one of her engineers. She's too inexperienced. If you help me, I can make sure you have a better future here, Victoria said. Sarah stepped forward. Is there a problem? Victoria turned with a cold smile. Not at all. Just discussing ways to improve efficiency. Sarah clenched her fists. She had no proof, but she knew Victoria was plotting against her, and then, the worst happened. 2 weeks before the official investors' presentation, Sarah walked into a boardroom only to see Victoria already there, pitching her technology to another set of executives. Sarah froze. The slides, the demonstration, it was all her work. She stormed in. What the hell is going on? Victoria turned, unfazed. Oh, Sarah. You're early. Sarah looked at Xavier, who stood near the window, watching the scene unfold. You knew about this? She asked, her voice trembling. Xavier's jaw tightened. I told Victoria to test investor interest. Sarah felt like she had been slapped. Without telling me? Victoria smirked. Sarah, business is about strategy, not emotions. I was simply ensuring the best possible outcome. Sarah gritted her teeth. She had played fair, but clearly, this world didn't operate on fairness. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She knew she had one chance to flip this in her favor. The next morning, she requested a private meeting with Xavier. Give me 5 minutes, she said when she walked into his office. Xavier sighed. Sarah, if this is about, she cut him off. Let me finish. Then, she dropped her final move. I have the source code, she said. Xavier's brows lifted slightly. I wrote it, I own it, Sarah continued. If Victoria wants to run my idea without me, she'll have to build everything from scratch. Xavier exhaled, rubbing his temple. You're more ruthless than you look. I learned from the best, she shot back. A smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. Fine. You run the pitch. But don't make me regret it. The day of the investors' pitch arrived. The room was packed with billionaires, tech moguls, and fashion executives. Sarah stood at the front, her heart pounding. Victoria watched from the sidelines, arms crossed. Sarah took a deep breath and started. She explained how the AI worked, how it analyzed body shapes and preferences to create personalized outfits. Then, she ran a live demo. The investors leaned forward, intrigued. One of them, an older man with silver hair, spoke up. How much are you asking for? Sarah swallowed. $2 million for initial production and expansion. The man nodded. I'll give you 3. Gasps echoed across the room. Xavier chuckled, shaking his head. Looks like you just made yourself a millionaire. Sarah could hardly breathe as she left the boardroom. She had done it. As she walked past Victoria, the older woman murmured, well played. Sarah smiled. I learned from watching you. That night, she sat in her tiny apartment, staring at the contract in her hands. She wasn't a struggling designer anymore. She was about to build an empire. The weeks following the investors' pitch were a whirlwind. Sarah found herself in a world she had only dreamed of, meetings with manufacturers, marketing experts, and industry insiders. She was no longer just a struggling designer, she was now the CEO of her own startup, Stylex AI. With the initial funding, she and her team developed a refined version of the AI software. They launched a beta test, allowing select users to try the platform. The response was overwhelming. Social media buzzed with excitement about the technology that could generate unique outfits in seconds. Xavier, though still skeptical, kept a watchful eye. You've got momentum, he told her one evening in his office. But the real challenge is keeping it. Sarah nodded. She knew success wasn't just about launching, it was about sustaining and growing. Just as Stylex AI was gaining traction, a major competitor released a similar product. It was backed by a billion-dollar fashion empire, making it an immediate threat. Investors grew nervous. Some even suggested Sarah sell the company before she was crushed by the competition. For the first time, doubt crept in. Was she fighting a losing battle? But Sarah refused to give up. Instead of panicking, she refocused. She listened to customer feedback, improved the AI's accuracy, and added features her competitors didn't have. She partnered with rising designers who saw the potential of her technology. Slowly, she turned the tide. A year later, Stylex AI wasn't a billion-dollar company yet, but it was thriving. They had over 500,000 users, partnerships with major fashion retailers, and a growing reputation in the industry. Sarah sat in her office, her own office, and took a deep breath. She had started with nothing. Now, she had a business that was making real impact. Xavier visited one evening, watching her with a rare look of approval. You're not at the top yet, he said, but you've come further than anyone expected. Sarah smiled. And I'm not done yet. She knew there were still bigger mountains to climb, but for now, she was proud, not because she had made millions, but because she had built something from the ground up, and that was just the beginning. Sarah didn't reach her ultimate goal overnight, but she proved that resilience and vision mattered more than immediate success. And she wasn't stopping anytime soon.
Please subscribe, like, comment and share this video. It means a lot to us. Thank you.